The Looking Glass for Alex and the collective. If you're here, you're meant to hear this message about how we were cut from our divinity, from our original self that was half flesh, half spirit. And it put us in a dark underworld, kind of like an infantile state. And we have to grow back up to our divine self. And this process is painful, confusing, and it takes a lot of work. So let's talk about what this process is and what Spirit is showing us. We're also going to learn about ancient gods and goddesses and the symbologies connected to them, that although you read about these symbologies in ancient history, I'm being told a little bit of a different story. So let's get started. We're going to read this piece like a map. At 1 o'clock, Alex is under a cave that has a cross on it and a beehive. She's actually drinking honey from the beehive like mead or golden honey. And this beehive is significant. This is her original form. We moved down and there was a shameful body language right here of her putting her hands on her face like she was cut. Notice that her head at 1 o'clock has one cat ear and the other cat ear was cut off. So this is a symbol of being cut. We go down to 5 o'clock and there's a part of herself that is cut in half. Half of her face is showing. Her hair makes the symbol of the scorpion, and there is a symbol of a mosquito-looking being at 5 o'clock that is pointing at a death where she died. At 7 o'clock is an awakening. This is a part of herself that is noticing her ancient roots. This is the dragonfly reflecting her blueprint of her soul. This is what the looking glass does for you. It shows you the blueprint of your soul. Move up from there and we see the sacred cat with the symbol of what looked like a lotus flower, but I really believe that it's the bumblebee. There are many symbols of bumblebees, bugs, mosquitoes, and even the scarab flying beetle. There is also a red dragon and symbols of fire and water. Alex is in the very center with an egg on her head, but her egg hat looks like a cat, and this is a communication to Alex. Alex is holding a crown, and she has little coins all over her, some of them having faces of humans, some having the face of a bug, and this goes back to Sicily and some ancient symbols of these coins. Now, I don't know exactly what it means, but I have some understanding. They are called the bee coins of Sicily, and they come back to 5 or 700 BCE. So let's delve into the energy of the bee, as Alex and the blueprint of her soul is connected to the bee goddess. Bees, like all insects that spin cocoons or weave webs, serve as images of the miraculous interconnectedness of life. The intricate cellular structure that secretes the golden essence of life is an image of the network of invisible nature that relates all things to each other in an ordered, harmonious pattern. The ancient story of Zeus was that he was fed on honey in Crete, as honey was the nectar of the gods. Now, Alex, your piece as your body in the center never showed a belly button. This means that you have a blueprint of the gods, not having a belly button. Drinking from the nectar of a honeycomb means that you come from the gods. So the bee pollinates the flowers and gathers their nectar to be transformed into honey. It was an example of the continual activity required of human beings to gather the crops and transform them into food. I disagree. I think that it is about transforming from lead to gold and to change our spiritual ignorance into an awareness, and that is the alchemy of transforming from lead to gold, the golden honey. I definitely encourage you to get into alchemy because these symbols are alchemical in nature. For a watchful eye, the relationship between the queen bee and the goddess and her priestesses dressed as bees must have seemed irresistible, and in Minoan Crete, 4,000 years later, the goddess and her priestesses dressed as bees, and they're shown dancing together on a golden seal. This is the seal I see on your body, found buried with the dead. The bee signified the life that comes from death, as did the scarab, and this is the scarab beetle in Egypt. Because of this reason, the gold ring seal was placed on a tomb. So you have these seals and these coins on you. So the temple of Thiola was the goddess of the bees. The humming of the bee was actually heard as the voice of the goddess, the sound of creation. Virgil, for instance, describing the noise of howling and clashing made to attract swarming bees. They clash the symbols of the Great Mother. So this circular coin-looking image on you isn't just a coin, it's not just a seal, but it's also a symbol that clashes together that brings forward the bees. This is the bee goddess looking like, to me, the mosquito at 5 o'clock in your piece. Notice the scarab beetle wings. There's the mosquito there if you look right at 5 o'clock. And the wings are from the beetle. So this beetle energy and these coins, the symbols, are all connected. The beetle is connected to the wings as well, as the beetle was the flying beetle. And when you think of being the queen bee, everyone works for you. It's a symbol that the entire universe works for you. Notice the cross here in a tomb and then this beehive. They made tombs that look like beehives and there's a cross. And you at 1 o'clock have a cross on your head and a beehive. The tombs at Mycenae were shaped as beehives, as was the Omphalos at Delhi in classical Greece, where Apollo ruled with his chief oracular priestess. Apollo speaks of 3 female seers as 3 bees. They are bee maidens, and they practiced divination. They were oracles. What? So the coin isn't just a coin, it's the letter O for oracle. And these 3 bee goddesses taught divination. They taught what it was to be an oracle and what it took to become an oracle. And the symbols of the bee and the honey are connected to it. So these sacred bee maidens with their gift of prophecy were to be Apollo's gift to Hermes, the god who alone could lead the souls of the dead out of life and sometimes back again. The word for honeycomb is neuter. So the goddess, death, fate, resurrection, heart are all meanings that are illuminated by this imagined bee goddess. And this bee goddess is incredibly significant because I tried to figure out who you were, and I know that I saw the bee symbol, and Spirit told me, go to sleep and wake up and you'll know. And so today, Spirit showed me all the answers. Bees have an ancient reputation as the bringers of order, and their hives served as models for organizing temples in many Mediterranean cultures. So in Asia, Greece, and Rome, the Melissa or the Melissae were Greek or Latin words for bees. What? And these priestesses were often prophets or oracles who entered the ecstatic trance induced by preparations that included ingesting honey. I eat honey every day. This is crazy. So obviously your higher self is encouraging you to eat unprocessed raw honey because it's going to help you to remember who you are as the bee goddess and the oracle. The bees are called the birds of the Muses, and they are attracted to the heavenly fragrances of flowers, from which they make the divine nectar. I knew I saw a lot of flowers in your pieces, including the flower on the head of the cat, but we're going to talk about that because it holds many meanings besides that. Honey is antibacterial, and it is mildly of laxative properties, and it has a sweet taste, made as its primary its ingredient was in ancient medicines. It is widely believed to be a source of divine nourishment. In the myths of the ancient world, honey often nourished a divine child raised in secret by a goddess. Is this why they tell us that infants shouldn't have honey? They don't want our children to be oracles and psychics and goddesses and things like that. So you look like you're in a cave at 1 o'clock eating honey, and these goddesses fed their infants honey inside caves. Notice this bee symbol. It's kind of hard to see, but this bee symbol looks like a lotus flower if you turn it upside down. And I assumed it was a lotus flower, but apparently it is a bee. And that is what is on your cat, that is your higher self. Now, your higher self is going to tell you something about our transcendence, and it's going to relate to, there's the symbol of the bee. It looks like a lotus flower, and so that's going to be really significant for you. But your higher self currently, which is a cat, who is a shapeshifter, by the way, is going to tell you many things about the blueprint of your soul and how to get back to a place of remembering and being the powerful bee goddess that you once were. This is a sculpture of the bee goddess. The priestesses of historical descendants of the ancient bee goddess were Demeter, Rhea, Cybele. They were called Melissae, the ancient Latin word for bees. The Bible mentions a ruler of the prophetess of ancient Israel called Babora, and is the queen bee. Her priestesses were known as Deborahs, like Deborah. Some say that the priestesses of the moon goddesses were called bees because it was believed that all honey came from the moon, the hive, whose bees were the stars. Now, I know a lot about being born in the moon. The god of the moon is named Sin, and we were born in Sin. So we were born in moon energy. And so, yes, this is making sense. So the Melissa, the goddess of the queen bee, taught mortals how to ferment honey into mead. In the Hermetic hymn of Hermes, the Melissa feed on honey and are inspired to speak the truth. These traditions made the oracles of sacred utterance, and the oracular power of the oracle is associated with the buzzing of the bees. Oh my, this is probably one of my favorite reads. So, the omphalos is shaped like a beehive, and in Paphos, Greece, the site of Aphrodite's tomb was known as the navel of the earth. Okay, so you don't have a navel. And so this is some kind of connection here. There's also a connection with you being in a cave that is connected to a sacred stone. The navel cord connects the fetus with the outer and inner worlds. Aphrodite's temple was the place where initiates were nourished and birthed into higher planes of consciousness. This is what this piece is telling you. You're being birthed into higher places of consciousness and remembering who you are. And so you're going to want to connect with that bee goddess and your cat and wear their garment or their energy or their download like a cloak. This is interesting. The Anatolian goddess is often showing wearing a beehive as a tiara. You're holding a tiara, which is a crown in your hand in your piece. The goddess's tiara announces her status as a queen bee and suggests that she streams with honey, a much revered substance in ancient times. When I read things like this, I think all religions are speaking the same story. They just have many different interpretations. The golden crown, the corona crown, the corona borealis, it's all connected to shifting from being ignorant to being awake, being a small soul, being a tall soul, being polarized male and female, coming back to unity and balance, but growing our soul and being able to hear the voice of spirit. And also the secret of connecting with these ancient gods and goddesses and hearing their downloads so that we can become them is the secret that's being presented to you. Bees are known to have a high intelligence, meaning they know the clock of the world. They know what time it is. They know when things are happening. Their vibration is so sensitive they can feel, and their little antennas reflect that they are telepathic. So they are absolutely connected to the sun, telepathy, the oracle, ascension, transcendence. And I believe that the bee energy dominates the energy of the cat, which is why the cat has the bee on her or his head. The queen bee laying thousands of eggs a day is a symbol of teaching the masses. It's time when you come into your voice to teach what you know. And these are eggs that are hatching on your head. The queen bee laying thousands of eggs for everyone to rebirth and to see the truth. I love how this person used the allegory of human beings and why have we been denied the truth of our origins with our religions. It's basically they took the female goddess away, but the goddess is coming back. Let's talk about Bastet. This is the cat. And your cat, your higher self, is telling you a story, saying that yes, you were the bee goddess and you were sent down to become you were transformed into a cat, and your cat essence shifted and changed as you shifted and changed. So Bastet holds a lot of feminine energy, healing energy, being the healer and all of that. But guess what? Bastet wasn't always the healer. Before Bastet became Bastet, she was a cat goddess that had scorpion tails on her hair. She was a goddess of war and death, and she killed, and she was basically in her ignorant stage. So the story that's being presented to you is that we all, no matter what ancient god or goddess we're reading about, every living being expands and grows. And likewise, your cat, which is your higher self. Your cat used to be Mafdet, and Mafdet was the one that had the scorpion hair. And this is why at 5 o'clock you are under a wall, which means you were under the spirit of understanding. You were under the stand because you were cut and you were rendered powerless. You lost your memory and you began to manifest as the cat Mafdet with the scorpion hair. So the symbol of the mosquito down there is that you were a predator. You fed on other people, you killed them. And so then you grew from there, like the body of Bastet. Now let's talk about the sorting hat, because right at your feet is you wearing a sorting hat. And this sorting hat is taking you to a rainbow bridge and under the rainbow. So the allegory of being sorted is kind of like judgment. We are sorted into which realm we get to go to. And there are 4 realms like Harry Potter. And these 4 realms really help you to decide which world you're going to go to next. What energy are you going to learn from next? Harry Potter went to Gryffindor. Gryffindor is about learning that you are powerful because you don't think you are. You don't know who you are. Harry Potter was polarized by low self-worth and the spirit of abandonment because his parents died and he was raised by narcissistic family members. So because he was polarized and didn't know he was powerful, he didn't get put into Slytherin, which he didn't really want to be in Slytherin because he didn't understand
Did you
Slytherin.
Potter?
Slytherin energy is pushing people who are polarized into being more balanced, either ruthlessly or through comedy. So Harry Potter standing on the bridge and notice that you are on the bridge is that he came to the end of Gryffindor and he found out that he had the power all along. He didn't need his wand, anything outside of himself to give him that power. So he stood on the bridge and he threw the wand down. So to be on the bridge is to leave an old world behind and go into a new world. These four worlds are described in the myth of Ur. The myth of Ur is a story about an individual who died for 10 days and then suddenly came back to life. While they were dead, they saw four realms known as four rainbows. And the rainbow bridge bridged an old world to a new world. So this is significant in your piece because you are being bridged from an old world to a new world because you are being sorted. The story goes that there's two upper worlds and two lower worlds. And this is going to be significant too because this is absolutely geometrically correct. The Lady of Necessity gave people lottery tokens to go to the next world. So you are covered with lottery tokens. So these tokens and this goddess of the bee, it's all connected to where you are and that you are being sorted. And it looks as if you are going to one of the upper two worlds. And my understanding of it is different than what is in written history. I see them as houses. In my father's house are many mansions. And when we think of a house, we have to understand that your cat that you're sitting on was a house. So being the body of Christ is being in the house of Christ. Newt or Nuit says, "Come to my house of Cobb." People call the earth the house of Geb. And so being in a house is being under a spiritual teaching. So to be in a small house like a Muggle is because they have small power. And when we are ready to shift from small power, we connect with a God who is closer to a mansion, which is more powerful, like Hogwarts. Usually when a person is spiritually 12 years old is when they make this transition. As Jesus was 12 when he left the Bible, Harry Potter was 12 when he left the Muggles, and Dorothy was 12 when she left Kansas City, leaving an old empty house behind and going to a mansion of many rooms like Jesus's father is really an allegory of going to a new school, a new reality. It's a transcendence, it's an ascension that leads us to Emerald City, and many of us go there through our heart chakra because we are being sorted. Christians will call it being judged. It's not as extreme as they put it. My understanding is we were once one, and then this oneness was cut in half. We were cut, just like your art says. The Egyptian god was Adam or Atum. Scientific is Adam. Christian is Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve was cut in half. The moon was cut from the sun, and we were cut. And so there are four realms. There's four circles, two upper and two lower. If you look really closely, you can see that lotus flower that is on the forehead of your cat, which also makes a bumblebee symbol. So that your cat has the top of the bumblebee symbol going up and not down reflects that you're going to one of the two upper realms, not the lower realms. You have ascended. If the lotus flower looked upside down, you would have been shown that you were going to a lower realm, one of the four realms. According to your art, you're going to one of the upper two realms, which means you're not going to experience a lot of negativity like Harry Potter had to experience because he was polarized. When you are in the house of the cat, you have to become the cat. This is why you look like a cat. So when people drink the blood of Christ and eat his body, it's an allegory that they become him. When you step into the body of Christ, well, you have successfully passed the grade of being the Christ, and you get to move on from there. So when you become the cat, when you become the queen bee, then you move on from there. So you have to embody that the energy of the house that you are in order to move to a bigger house. And so this is what you're being shown. It's time for you to take your spiritual ascension very seriously and begin to treat your body and your life as being sacred. Notice when I put a mirror up to your piece, it makes two giant bees. So your job right now is to connect to the queen bee whatever way you can, through research, through drawing these bees, through somehow going and talking to a bee and connecting to Bastet and wearing their energy so that you can become that queen bee yourself. This is the new house you're going to step into. The dragonfly is also being showcased. And if you look at your piece as a mandala, you can see the little bumblebees, 3 bumblebees around the mandala. It's so cute. Your antennas reflect being an oracle and being a psychic. Aren't you excited? I'm totally excited. So the drink that you're drinking at 1 o'clock shouldn't be anything but water and honey and things that will raise your consciousness and raise your frequency to become your divine self, the queen of the bees. Bzz, 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 bzz. Thank you so much for what you have to teach us, Alex, about stepping into our godhood. If you would like a reading from the Looking Glass and know what the blueprint of your soul has to say, go to forestfairy.com.